So now I'm going to reveal the big secret. Why are we doing this on April Fool's Day? And the answer is because if I'm wrong this year, I'm going to say April Fools. Okay, so let's get into it. So I think you already know this, but we're pretty proud of this. There's a lot of very sophisticated groups around the world that predict hurricanes every year. And of course, this is something I've been doing since I've been really even a child. What is it? I love Tina Turner. All right. Well, thank you. So anyway, I have to say that one of the things that drives me is I like being first, and I like being right. And I think all of you know that who know me. I take no prisoners along the way, and I do have good relative humidity, even if I don't have humility. So, but we did have some pretty good forecasts, and over the last 2 years of any forecast group in the world, the CAC was the number one group. We only missed the total number of hurricanes and major hurricanes by one. Thank you. I thought when I said that you would all boo. But, you know, I really don't like it when we get hit, but I think it's the alternative of not knowing is not okay. In this day and age where we know so much, we have to share it with the community and hope the community, you know, uses this information to inform their own decisions, whether they're in government or in their own personal lives or building new buildings or rehabbing old ones, or, you know, this is important stuff. And climate adaptation, really, I hope if you have this down now, is the only real choice we have. Because the climate is going to get warmer with very high probabilities for the rest of our lives, for what's already in the atmosphere. We're a greenhouse planet, and that's just how it works. So that doesn't mean we have to flee, but it means we have to stay with purpose and with intelligence, real intelligence, not artificial kind. So with that, I want to move on. These are the names of the hurricanes for this season. And down there is Melissa. That was my firstborn, so I have a feeling that could be one to watch. And you can see how scientific this is so far. So Stu showed this. This is a slightly different version of this. These are all the storms from last year. And the arrows that go from left to right show the influence of a warming climate on every one of those storms. We have come so far that we can now measure what the difference is. This is not 100% accurate, but it's pretty accurate. And so it's actionable information to understand that we're living in the age of major hurricanes, and it is what it is. Will we have a major hurricane every year? No. Will we have 3 hurricanes hit in 65 days in Sarasota? No. Could it happen again this year? Absolutely. It could. So this is what we don't know, but we do know sort of the recipe and all the ingredients, and we're going to talk about that right now. And these, this is what fuels the hurricane season. Sea surface temperatures, we know that in the last year, the ocean temperatures around the world, not just in the Atlantic, are at record highs, not seen in the history of human beings. So we're at a record level. This year, we're slightly right now below that record, but not by much. There's a thing out there called the Atlantic decadal oscillation, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But I'll tell you what that is, but it has to do with warm water too. And then you've heard about the Bermuda high pressure in the Atlantic. I'm sure every meteorologist on TV has talked about this every summer, about the Bermuda high. And why they do that is because the high pressure is what, if it's strong and it's stable over Bermuda, it steers the storms around the edges of that high, and that helps us figure out what the path is. And then there's this thing called the ENSO. We have two things going on right now. We have the EMSO, which is the Elizabeth Moore Sarasota Open tennis, which is going to start next Sunday, and I hope you'll all be there because I'm going to be there. I got drafted to do the weather again, and of course I love doing it, and especially with Ray Collins, who is just an amazing guy. He was our #1 TV reporter for years here in Sarasota. So anyway, not to digress, but ENSO is the Southern Oscillation, the El Nino Southern Oscillation, and it turns out it's really, really important for hurricanes in the Atlantic. And you've heard of wind shear. We're going to talk about that. A little bit about mid-level moisture, because if we don't have that, we don't get major hurricanes. Okay, so we have to have that. And then we have all these wonderful forecast models that I can't even believe we have. We didn't have any of that when I started off as a meteorologist, none. And of course, we have trends. And my old saying is, the trend is your friend until it ends. So we're definitely in a trend, and that's important. So this is what the sea surface temperatures look like right now, and the red is warm. And what's really interesting about it is you can see the Gulf Stream going up the coast of East Florida, but look in the Gulf. You see that little blob out there? That is called the loop current, and it's already red. Our sea surface temperature right here in Sarasota is a little cooler than normal right now. We've had a cold winter here, relatively speaking. But the water is warming up fast. You'll see the green along the Florida west coast, and that's a little cooler water, and up by the Gulf Coast, because we've had quite a bit of cool air this year, but already the Gulf is warming up. So the sea surface temperature is also related to a thing we call ocean heat. And ocean heat is the amount of energy that's stored in the upper 200 or 300 feet of the ocean, or the Caribbean or the Gulf of Mexico. And the yellow areas are already deep, warm water. And so when a hurricane goes over those, and the red, of course, are really warm, you can see how the Caribbean is already super warm. In fact, the Caribbean is at record high temperatures right now. So we have a lot of hurricanes that form in that area. That's part of the main development region. And so, you know, they come up and go into the Gulf, and then, you know, sometimes they strike us and sometimes other places along the Gulf Coast. And there's been an awful lot of those, like 8 storms in the last 7 years or something like that. Now, here is the anomaly of the sea surface temperatures. And you can see the blue areas are the cool water, and the red areas are the warm water. But we have sort of like this bipolar thing going on in the Gulf right now. But as the spring really gets going and the winds shift to south, a lot of that cold water is going to mix in, and we should see some pretty warm water. But you can see all the yellow and orange out there. That's all above the last 30-year average. So the water's pretty warm, and these are isotherms of equal temperature, and 26 centigrade is kind of like super hurricane water. We don't get super hurricanes unless they're 26 degrees centigrade or more. But we have some of that now, and you can see the loop current going up into the Gulf. It's already reaching that level right now, and it's, April 1st. This is another really interesting look. This is the average seasonal water temperatures taking over since 1800 or 1850. I forget what the first year is in this mess. But on the left-hand side, you can see January and across the bottom through December. And this is the annual march of temperatures in the Gulf. And you can see they really, really warm up in the summertime. And then you can also note the little blue line there that is sort of right at April 1st is what that temperature average is right now. And I look at that, there's a few readings that are above that, but not very much. And you can see the latest is the last week or two has kind of been warming up pretty fast. Now, this is the bigger area of the Caribbean, and I was telling you right now the temperature is at record highs. Last year is the orange, 2024, and the blue is this year, and just the other day, the last few days have been a little cooler, but it's tracking right there near the high, and this is a big area we have to watch. Because a lot of our storms originate in the Caribbean. The Atlantic multi-decadal oscillation is an oscillation that happens on the planet. Our planet is not perfectly moving through space. It's tilted 23.5 degrees, and even the North Pole is moving around a little bit because we're losing ice, and we have less ice, so the North Pole is shifting a little bit. We have oscillations in our normal climate system that kind of repeat themselves, and one of them is this AMO. And right now we're in a warming trend, and we have been since 1990, but these warm trends last roughly 60 to 70 years, and we're in the warm phase now. So when we're in the warm phase, that means the oceans just in general are warmer than normal. So we're not in a good spot. We're right in the sweet spot still. And it's important to realize that because this just adds fuel to the fire. Now, the position of the Bermuda High, this is, I put this up here so you can see, it's sort of like a big system out there. And when the high, you can see the way the winds blow around a high, it's clockwise. So along the bottom of that blue area, the winds are really moving from east to west. And when a storm forms to the south of the high, where it would form, because it can't form within a high pressure, it has to form to the south, it tends to be deflected into the Caribbean, into Florida, into the Gulf of Mexico. And so when we have a strong, stable Bermuda High, we tend to get more flow into the Gulf of these storms. Now, this is the one thing that I have the least confidence in right now, for a lot of reasons. But We don't have the perfect setup for that right now. It's a little iffy, but it could go either way. And so it's kind of neutral right now. And then you hear about El Nino and La Nina, and we've had, wow, whipsaws in this in the last few years. We had a very serious El Nino that gave way to neutral conditions in 2024, and neutral conditions on the way to a La Nina that actually was verified in November. And we've gone through the La Nina phase, and now we're back into neutral phase. And these are all the models, and you can see along the bottom again, that's 3-month averages like May, June, and July, August, September, October. And all of those lines are different climate models that are forecasting the future La Nina or El Nino outcome. And 0 is the 0 line, that's neutral. When it gets to minus 1.5, we're in a La Nina, and when it gets to plus 1.5, we're in an El Nino. But when you look at this, every single model is saying neutral for this year. That's the same as we had last year. The flow is the opposite, but the result is the same. So these are the number of hurricanes, tropical storms, and major storms we have under El Nino and La Nina, and you can see La Nina years are supercharged years for hurricanes. But here's what's happened, and this hasn't been proven yet, but I think it will be. And so this is what I think I know, but we don't have enough data to prove it yet, okay? A neutral condition today is what La Nina used to be in 1990. So where neutral sounds like, okay, that's not that bad. It's a lot worse now because the oceans have warmed up so much since 1990. So I count neutral the same way I used to count La Nina in the 1990s. The next thing is wind shear. Now, this is can be a little hard to understand, but that little hurricane symbol during La Nina neutral is sitting on the surface of the ocean. That's the center of the storm. And you see the eye in it, that little symbol. But in a La Nina or neutral, we see the clouds can stack up vertically because the low-level winds and the high-level winds are the same. On the right-hand side, when we have El Nino, we have more wind shear, and it blows that storm downstream. And when that happens, it doesn't conserve angular momentum very well. So let me give you an example. Let's say you have a beautiful ice skater, and she's going into a turn. And you'll notice how the ice skater has their arms out like this. Consider this is the atmosphere out here. And then as she turns and brings her arms in and stands straight, she spins faster and faster. And that's what the conservation of angular momentum is. And so when we have that situation without shear, that's perfect for the conservation of angular momentum, and that's why we get rapid intensification when a storm is over warm water and when there's very little shear. So that's kind of how it works in a nutshell. Now, this is Africa, and this area of Africa is called the Sahel. And we know that Africa has a big desert, and there's lots of dust that gets blown up when storms go over or the winds are strong over Africa. And in the summertime, the winds blow from the east coast to the west coast of Africa and then out into the Atlantic. And if it's dry over that area in orange, then the dust clouds are monumental, and they go out over the Atlantic. And when they do, they suppress hurricane formation for two reasons. The first one is the sun doesn't get through to the sea surface to keep it warm, so the sea surface actually cools down, and so that's a negative for hurricanes. But that dry air means that the middle level moisture in the storm that it needs to really flourish is absent. So our storms tend to be weaker, and last year we had 8 weeks of that and we had no hurricanes. But then when the dust cleared, all shit broke loose. So here's the forecast for this year. This is valid for July, and that green area is the Sahel, and blue and green is wet. If this is true, which it probably is, that means there's going to be less dust. And when we have less dust, we have more hurricanes. And we have more, this is, by the way, what the dust looks like when it comes out. It's very obvious. And if you look to the bottom on the, let's see if I have my little pointer here. This is a little storm coming, this is an easterly wave, and it comes right on, and it does fine as long as it's south of the dust. But if it's in the dust, it can't, look how clear it is other than the dust. There's no clouds or anything in there. Okay, so that's a factor. Now, this is our best climate model for moisture. And this is the major American model. And this happens to be the forecast for June, July, and August. And the easterly waves, you can see the green area there in Africa coming out into the Atlantic. And it's kind of, a little dusty there, but not as bad as last year. And then the green areas are where the models feel like there's going to be a lot of moisture. That correlates with easterly waves and tropical storms moving over that area. And there's a couple of paths. One is out to sea, which we really like. And the other one is kind of up the west coast of Florida again. And I happen to know that the model is also predicting really warm sea surface temperatures right off the coast of Sarasota all summer. So that's not great news. And then this one is September through November. And you can see it's almost the same, and you do get that feeling that over there's a blob of sort of the way Milton came across last year. And the Caribbean is really, really dry during September, October, November. So this kind of says to me that not just the west coast of Florida, but Florida is kind of going to be in play during this hurricane season. This is July. Last July, we had no hurricanes. This year, it looks kind of not great. And so, whereas July last year was very calm, July may be a month where we have more activity than we would like. And I'm putting this chart up because July is also hot. It's our hot season. If we had a hurricane in July and the power went out, and we know it will if we have one, we have a double whammy of losing power, and then maybe for days or a week, and a hurricane hitting at the same time. And that's the recipe for something really different that we haven't experienced here. But it's a threat, it's an issue, we need to know about it. And this is one of the reasons why we had the CAC Conference on Climate and Human Health. It was called The Heat is On. And this is what we're talking about, because as we move further into the future, even if it doesn't happen, this year. This kind of thing can happen in the future, and we need to get ready for it before it happens, not just respond for when it does. But heat already is the biggest killer of people in the United States from climate and weather. It's not tornadoes, it's not hurricanes, it's heat. One of the things about heat is, and Jack knows this, Jack Watson here, who is the CAC doctor in charge, he knows that the way we record deaths, you might die of a heart attack, and the heart attack may be from heat. But you died of a heart attack, not heat. So it's really hard to really track heat deaths in real time, and they're much greater than it looks. And yet, because these codes were made in a stable climate, they haven't yet reacted to the fact that people are dying of heat now that didn't die of heat in 1980. So the system is a little bit behind the climate, and we all are feeling that way. So then we get to October, and of course, October is just a hellish month here, you know. And it seems like October is what we worry about the most, and you can see the tracks again kind of put Florida in play. So July and October are the 2 months right now that I'm most concerned about. And this goes on into November. We may have a late hurricane season this year. So it may start off a little slow, but like last year, it could be, you know, the second half might be pretty exciting. So this is the other model. This is the European model. And, you know, us scientists, all of us argue about which one is better. But they're both saying kind of the same thing. And unfortunately, you can see, whoops, I'm sorry. Up here is the frequency of tropical storms. So these are named storms. And it only goes through September, April through September. Every month we'll get one more month. And it's saying now that the average during that month is 11.7, and the forecast from the European model is 11.9 with a variance of 3.5. Okay, so 11.9 without October and November. And this is our national forecast now for the temperature outlook through July, May, June, and July, and the precipitation outlook. And our models are saying kind of wet, which suggests tropical activity, and hot, like super hot. And then this goes into the fall, September through November, again, moisture and above normal temperatures. So now here's the thing that Dr. Waterman was talking about. I went back and looked at how many storms we've had in every category since 2015, so 10 years. Remember, the average is 14. But when I look at the last 10 years, it's not 14. A matter of fact, we never had a year with 14 in the last 10 years. It's because the climate is changing so fast that the averages are underplaying the real risk. And this is what I've been hopping on everything from building codes to whatever, is we're behind the 8 ball of what it actually is, and we're designing for the climate of the past, not the climate we have or are likely to have. So we've had an average of 18 storms a year for the last 10 years, not 14. That's a huge difference. And 8.2 hurricanes per year, average, and almost 4 major hurricanes per year. So all of this is increasing, and we need to look at this because the trend is your friend until it ends, and it hasn't yet. I don't know when it's going to end. It may not end. So when we look at all of these things, here's the trend for sea surface temperature, very warm, for the AMO, warm phase, for the Bermuda high, possibly weaker, and I only put a 60% probability, like I'm only 60% certain, whereas in the other ones I'm pretty certain. The ENSO, which is the La Nina, El Nino with low wind shear, very high, 80%. Then wind shear is going to be low. I'm pretty sure of that. Sahara air, I think it's going to be less dust, but I'm not as sure. And mid-level moisture, I just think there's going to be moist enough. I'm saying moist enough, maybe not record moisture, but moist enough. So, are you ready? Janet? Are you ready? 17, 10, and this is the one I don't like, folks. Same as last year for major hurricanes. So that doesn't mean we're going to have 3 hurricanes in Sarasota, but I don't see a big decrease coming. It's early. NOAA doesn't issue its forecast until May 15th. The reason we do this is so we have longer to think about this and do something about it. If we prepare and we don't need to be prepared, then I know it's a pain in the you-know-what. But if we're prepared and we have issues, then we kiss the ground that we're ready. And that's where we need to be. So now I want to go into just a few preparations that you could make, we can make, no matter what position you set in our society as a homeowner or an individual, a family member, running a community, whatever it is, in philanthropy, whatever. So you got to know your elevation. Did we ever learn that message? If you live at 5 feet, you better know you're at 5 feet, because if we have a 6-foot storm surge with waves on it, you're going to get wet. So it's good to know that. Your meeting, your family, you need to think about this right now, not when we are under threat. What is the family plan in case we have an issue? In your house, you need to have a safe room. You know why? We're having major tornadoes during hurricanes now. This is not normal, but in the supercharged atmosphere we're having EF3 tornadoes in hurricanes. So that means that you actually have to think about having a safe room. Your hurricane kits. These are all things you can get ready for. And by the way, Florida has tax holidays coming up, June 1st, I think. 10 days, no tax. I like no tax. I'm not the only one, I guess. Secure homes. You know, if you're doing remodeling, you know, over remodel just by a little bit. This is the time to really do a little more, not less. This is very important. Well, you know this, insurance is a big deal. Read the fine print now and make sure you have the proper coverage. Like what I would do. I think we're going to have more hurricanes this year. I think I'm going to increase my coverage. Right now, while you can do it. You might spend a little bit of money that maybe you'll regret in 6 months, but I doubt you will. Okay, power outages. Heat and power outages, a lethal mix in Florida. So think about what you might do yourself if this happens. Know your evacuation route and the shelters you're going to. This is so important. We have so many evacuation routes that are within 5 feet of sea level. We don't need a hurricane to have those flooded. We don't even need wind. All we need is a hurricane approaching during the season of high tide, which high tides are the highest here in October, just when hurricane season is the highest. So, don't assume because you see the road out in front of your house that you can leave wherever you are and go somewhere else. You got to understand the nature of your evacuation route and which one is better for you. But the time to think about that is now. Protect all of your important documents and get them ready so that you can just put them in the car or however you're going to leave and take them with you. Because if your house is flooded, they could be destroyed, and then you'll be, trying to replace all of that, and, that's incredibly stressful. Your vehicle, we lost almost 400,000 cars in Florida in the last 10 years to hurricanes. For the life of me, I don't understand why somebody doesn't get their mind wrapped around this opportunity. Get your cars out of the garage. Don't leave them there. Your rates have already doubled because you did. And for those of you that did move your cars, you're paying the doubled rate too. But wouldn't this be a great business enterprise having people who have garages, whether they're public or private, that could assign you, if you're at risk, a parking space right now during a hurricane? You would pay them for it. You'd move your car, and you wouldn't have that loss. There are hundreds and hundreds of parking spaces that aren't filled during hurricanes, but the garages on the Keys are full. So common sense can be uncommon. And finally, sign up for the CAC storm updates, because when there's a storm threatening Sarasota, into your mailbox every day you get it. And of course, we have NOAA, and they're the official, they make the official forecast. But it's just like watching a football game, right? You turn into the color, you want to listen to, the local, how is it going to affect us, and that's what we do. And sometimes we disagree with the forecast, and we'll tell you, well, we disagree, and this is how, and then you can take that or leave it, right? And hopefully you will leave when it's time. But listen to our public reporting. Make sure you don't decide that you're a meteorologist. I certainly would not want to go to a plumber if I was having heart surgery. So don't become an armchair meteorologist and think, oh, it's going to hit us. And don't look at every wobble and think that you know what's going to happen. Because if we don't know, you don't know. So anyway, have a post-storm plan of what life is going to look like if we do get hit. And these, again, are the names of the storms. And if we're right, those are the names we're going to have. And if we're wrong, April Fools. Thank you. Okay, we have some time for questions. Yes. Oh, John, oh, by the way, John Gaddis there. He has written a beautiful book, and it's outside for you for free if you want to take one home. I have one on my coffee table, and it's free of charge, so feel free. Thank you, John.
Thank you. Thank you. And I have to emphasize that it's free because people are afraid to take free stuff. They think there must be something suspicious about it, and there isn't. So anyway, Bob, what I was just going to say is there's a great website called Find My Elevation, and it's so easy to use. If any of you don't know what your elevation is, just put in your property address, and it'll come right up.
Thank you, John.
That's good to know.
That's great. Any other questions?
Bob, thank you. My question is whether you anticipate or fear that any government budget cuts or changes in policy would impair your ability to get the data you need to do your work.
That's an excellent question, and of course, we'll just take it right on with NOAA. I mean, I'm an alumni of NOAA and spent years working with NOAA and for NOAA. And, there are things that can be cut that aren't, taking your heart out. But we got to make sure that if we have to cut expenses, we preserve the things that we really need. And of course, the data sets are urgent. All the models are dependent upon that. And, we're pretty good about making these forecasts now, and we wouldn't want to get less good at it now that we have 23 million people living in Florida. So I would say, I have mixed emotions. Sure, if we can be more efficient, we should be as efficient as we can, but don't cut the heart out of the patient if you're going after a kidney. There's a difference. Yes, Richard?
Evacuation routes that take into account the factors you cite and that weren't set out 20 years ago, paying no attention whatsoever to the sea level rise and all these other factors. Is there a high quality source of an set of evacuation routes that would actually work?
Well, what I will say is the city has, I'm just going to use the city of Sarasota because I'm familiar with it. Longboat Key, I'm very familiar with. So they have some incredible resources, okay. I mean, they're on it. But as far as especially talking about evacuation routes, in my view, they should be coded in colors too, that say this is a low one, this is higher. So, depending on what, if all the roads are fine and we got 24 hours or 48 hours notice or longer, everything will be fine, but there will be those times when we don't have that. With rapid intensification, we could have a puddle out here 200 miles away, and tomorrow we could have a Category 5. Those are the things you worry about because it's different than anything we've expected. And Heather Hackett, probably, who is the czarina of all things response, is probably got some information.
Map your destination. Oh, sorry. 511, the app will actually map your destination, and it will take into account if any road closures are happening. So that's probably the most up-to-date version that you will get, and you can even put like routes, and so it takes all the information, compiles it, and as far as if that's what you were asking. Yes, thank you. Sure.
Any other questions?
I have a question. Here. So I just have a question. I'd like to know why it's called a wave, a tropical wave.
You want to know what it is?
I want to know why it's called a wave, because we think of waves like it's a wave coming at us, but it's
Well,
not.
an easterly wave actually is a wave. It looks like a wave as it moves across from Africa. It moves from the Indian Ocean over Africa into the Atlantic. And if you look at it, it is a wave shape. It actually is. So what I want to do before I release you all to the environment, however harsh it is to thank my staff, Rick Kirby and Melanie Ringel, who, just worked their behinds off to make sure this was flawless and pretty close. So I really appreciate their help. And special call out to Janet Combs, who is our official photographer. And boy, can she take pictures. So thank you to them. And to our board of directors, our members, our sponsors, and especially to all of you who come. And hopefully, you're the arrows. We're just pointing you. When you leave here, if you don't tell anybody and you don't help other people, then we failed. So it's up to you. Thanks very much.